I was 24 when it finally hit me that I wasn't part of my family. I was just an extra. The kind of person you add to group photos so it looks like everyone's included, but you crop out when it's time to print the frame. I didn't grow up with that realization. It was more like a slow drip poison, one offhand comment here, one forgotten invite there, until it built into something that stained everything I touched. My name's Tyler, and if you've ever sat at a family table and still felt like an outsider, maybe you'll understand why this story still makes my stomach twist. Growing up, I was the quiet kid in a loud family. My cousins were the golden ones. Cheer captains, honor roll kings, the kind of people who could do no wrong even when they were clearly in the wrong. Meanwhile, I liked to fix things. I'd disappear into the garage for hours to mess with engines, repurpose scrap wood, or rebuild old tech. That's probably where I earned the nickname Garage Boy. It started as a joke from my Uncle Rob when I was around 12. And everyone laughed at it. Everyone except me. But I let it slide like I always did, because it wasn't worth the fight, or so I thought. My parents, bless them, were never cruel, just distracted. My mom's the youngest of 5, and I guess after years of being steamrolled by her older siblings, she learned to keep her head down. My dad's a quiet man who works long hours as a mechanic and comes home too tired to notice much. He loved me in his own way, but he never stood up to the rest of the family. He was grateful to be accepted by them, even if it meant watching me be dismissed over and over. Every Christmas since I could remember, we'd make the long drive upstate to my Aunt Denise's house. Big, sprawling place with vaulted ceilings and a fireplace that looked like it belonged in a movie set. Her husband, Uncle Rob, made good money in construction, and she always liked to show it off. The house was spotless, the tree 2 stories high, and every dish arranged like it belonged in a cooking magazine. It wasn't warm exactly, but it was tradition. And for my mom, tradition was sacred. Every year we'd walk in and I'd get the same weak hug from Denise, that distant kind of affection that feels more like obligation than warmth. "There's our little garage boy," she'd say, chuckling as if I were 6 and not a grown adult with a full-time job. My cousins Ryan and Jared would nod in my direction, then go right back to their own conversations about college internships or gym routines or whatever shiny thing they were doing this year. I was used to it by now. The hierarchy was well established. Ryan and Jared were the princes. I was the help. Last Christmas was supposed to be different. I had news, big news. After years of freelancing and picking up odd jobs, I'd finally landed a full-time position at a tech repair company. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. And I was proud. I even saved up to buy thoughtful gifts for everyone, real ones, not the homemade keychains or crafted mugs I used to give when money was tight. I wrapped them myself, wrote cards by hand, and tucked each one into my bag with care. This year, I told myself, they'd see I wasn't just the quiet kid in the corner. I had something to offer. We arrived late afternoon, same as every year. Snow crunched under our tires as we pulled up to Denise's picture-perfect driveway. Her house glittered with lights, professionally installed, no doubt, and the front door was already swinging open before we even knocked. Denise was all smiles for my mom. Air kisses and compliments about her coat, her hair, her holiday pie. When it was my turn, the smile dipped a little. "Tyler," she said, flat as ever. "You're looking taller." I'm 6'2" and have been for 5 years. The first sign of something off came when I went to place the gifts under the tree. I knelt beside the mountain of boxes, trying to find a spot for mine without crushing anything, and noticed the tags. To Ryan, from Aunt Denise. To Jared, with love from Mom and Dad. There were stacks of gifts for them. For me? One small envelope tucked awkwardly in the branches. No box, just an envelope. I didn't say anything. Maybe the bigger gift was hidden elsewhere. Maybe she just forgot. I still had hope then. Dinner was a grand affair, like always. The dining room table was massive, dressed in gold runners and real pine garland, crystal glasses, full place settings, silver that had probably never touched a dishwasher. The seating arrangement was unofficial, but always the same. Denise at the head, Rob at the other, Ryan and Jared to her right and left, followed by the rest of the cousins. Then came the overflow table, a fold-out in the adjacent room for the younger kids. It was tacky but functional. I'd sat there for years. This year, though, I hesitated. I wasn't a kid anymore, and there were clearly enough seats at the main table. I approached a chair next to my cousin Haley, who gave me a tight smile. I pulled it out slowly, just about to sit, when Denise's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Oh, Tyler." No, sweetie," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the back. "The garage is heated. You can eat in there. The kids' table is already full, and this one's for, She trailed off and waved a hand. "Just family." The room went silent. Then Ryan snorted. Jared smirked. Someone, Haley maybe, let out an awkward laugh. My mom's face flushed, but she didn't speak. My dad was still in the kitchen. And me? I stood there, holding my plate like an idiot, heat creeping up my neck. Denise didn't look at me again. She turned back to her wine, dismissing me with one flick of her painted fingers. "There's a space cleared on the tool bench," she added. "I made sure." And that was it. Nobody objected. Nobody said, "Hey, he's family too." My own aunt had pointed at the garage like I was the dog, and my plate was quietly lifted from my hands by one of the younger cousins who passed it down the table like it was a dirty napkin. I didn't argue, not then. I nodded once, throat tight, and stepped back. My feet moved on autopilot, out the dining room, down the hallway, past the Christmas wreaths and laughing voices. The door to the garage creaked as I opened it. She wasn't wrong. It was warm in there. A little space heater buzzed in the corner. The workbench was clean, wiped down for the occasion. A single chair was pulled up beside it, like I'd been expected. I sat down slowly, my hands shaking, not from cold, but from something else, something that had been building for years. I pulled out my phone, stared at the home screen for a second, then I opened my messages. My thumb hovered for a moment, then pressed send. And just like that, the fuse was lit. 10 minutes later, I heard it. The scrape of chairs, the sudden hush, the shift in voices, and then, one by one, footsteps echoed across the floor. I stayed in that chair, breathing steady. And when the door to the garage creaked open behind me, I didn't turn around, not yet. I didn't look up right away. I sat there in the dim glow of the garage, my breath slow and deliberate, hands resting on my knees. The door behind me hung open, letting in a shaft of warm light and the faint sound of shifting feet. For a second, I thought maybe it was my mom, that maybe, just maybe, she'd finally grown a spine and come to say something, anything. But the footsteps hesitated, then retreated. The door closed again, soft as a sigh. Figures. I stared at the wall for a while, letting the hum of the space heater fill the silence. On the workbench in front of me sat an old, rusted vise I'd fixed for Uncle Rob 3 years ago. I'd brought it back to life with elbow grease and patience, only for him to joke later at Easter that it was probably going to snap in half one day. Everyone laughed, of course. I didn't. I remembered that moment now with crystal clarity. All the small ones came rushing in like water through a cracked dam. The time Ryan accidentally locked me out of the house at Thanksgiving and no one noticed I was gone for an hour. The time Denise called me mechanic trash under her breath, not knowing I was behind her. The Christmas I spent half the night fixing their broken generator because the power went out, and not even getting a thank you. I pulled out my phone again and stared at the message I'd sent. "Hey, if you meant what you said last time, I'm ready." I hadn't texted him in over a year. Not since the blow-up. Not since I told him I didn't want to be a part of that side of the family anymore. But this wasn't about pride anymore. It was about making a choice. And sometimes the only way to reclaim your dignity is to burn the bridge they keep walking over. My stomach growled, breaking the silence. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. I looked around. No plate, no food, not even the pity scraps from inside. They hadn't bothered. I guess they figured I'd help myself if I was really hungry. I got up slowly and opened the mini fridge I'd installed for Uncle Rob last spring. A single beer and a half-used bottle of mustard. That was it. I sat back down. About 15 minutes passed before the door opened again. This time, it was my dad. He stepped in like he was sneaking past a sleeping dog, quiet, almost guilty. "Hey, bud," he said, not meeting my eyes. "You all right?" I didn't answer right away, just nodded once. He scratched his head. "Your mom, she wanted to come, but your aunt started pouring wine and, well, things got busy." "Of course," I said flatly. He shifted his weight from foot to foot. "They're about to do presents." I looked at him then. "Presents," I repeated, my voice calm. "Great." He opened his mouth, then closed it. We sat in that silence for a beat longer before he cleared his throat and turned to leave. "Oh," he added, like an afterthought, "your envelope's under the tree, don't forget it." Then he was gone. I stood up. My legs ached from sitting so long in one spot. I wasn't going back in there, but I wasn't going to sit and sulk either. I needed air. I stepped outside. Snow crunched beneath my boots as I walked down the driveway, hands buried deep in my coat pockets. The stars were out, scattered like powdered sugar across a black sky. Everything was so still, so quiet. It made me feel both tiny and oddly powerful at once. That's when my phone buzzed. New message. Uncle Nate. "Glad you reached out. Where are you?" I smiled. Let me explain who Nate is. Uncle Nate is my mom's estranged younger brother. He's the black sheep of the family, but for reasons no one ever explained. When I was a kid, I remember hearing whispers about bad choices and drama involving him, but I never knew the full story. What I did know was that Nate was the only adult in that entire family who ever treated me like I mattered. He used to build little wooden toys and send them to me when I was younger. One time he showed up to one of my school science fairs just because I mentioned it on a phone call. He clapped louder than any parent there when I won second place. That kind of love, you don't forget it. But then, one year, poof, gone. My mom told me he'd moved away for work. My aunt said something snide about him not being fit to be around children. Over time, Nate became a ghost story. An awkward silence in family conversations. Every time I asked about him, I got shut down. Eventually, I stopped asking. But 3 years ago, he reached out to me, found my email somehow, said he'd been watching from afar, said he was proud of me, said if I ever needed him, he'd be there, and I had ignored him, out of fear, out of loyalty to people who didn't deserve it. Until tonight. Me. Still at Denise's, just stepped outside. "Nate, stay there. On my way." I didn't know what that meant. I didn't even know where he was. But I put the phone away and stood in the snow, watching the soft yellow glow from the windows, hearing the muffled laughter from inside like a bad sitcom I wasn't invited to. It took another 10 minutes before something inside snapped. I didn't mean to go back in, I really didn't. But the cold pushed me toward the warmth, and curiosity pulled me the rest of the way. I opened the back door and slipped quietly into the hallway, hovering just out of view. The living room was lit up like a showroom. Presents were being passed around in neat little stacks, with Denise's voice narrating the whole affair like she was hosting a game show. "And this one is for Jared, from us. Oh, I think you'll love it, sweetheart. Don't shake it too hard, it's fragile." The room laughed. "Here's another for Ryan. Looks like you've been very good this year, mister." More laughter. I spotted my mom tucked into a corner with a glass of wine and a fake smile. My dad stood behind her, arms crossed, eyes low. Neither of them had seen me. Then I spotted my gift, or rather my envelope. It was sitting on the mantel. Not under the tree, not passed around, just left there like junk mail. I walked in slowly, the air shifting as I entered. Conversations dulled, a few heads turned. Denise's smile dropped half a degree. "Tyler," she said, voice tight, "thought you were enjoying your little man cave moment." I said nothing. Just walked to the mantel and picked up the envelope. It had my name scribbled across the front in her unmistakable handwriting. I opened it. Inside was a $10 gift card to a gas station. That's it. No card, no note, no Merry Christmas, just a $10 gas card. The kind you buy in bulk and toss into secret Santa piles for coworkers you don't like. Something in me hollowed out. It wasn't the money. It was the message. I turned it over in my hands twice, then looked up. Denise was still watching me, smug now. Her lips curled like she'd just pulled off a great joke. The rest of the room didn't look at me, not really. A few glanced, then glanced away. Uncomfortable, guilty, bored. That was the moment I realized I'd never be seen here, never be respected, never be treated like a person with worth. I walked out again, back through the kitchen, through the hallway, out the door. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just stood there, in the snow again, and then headlights. A car I didn't recognize pulled into the driveway, sleek, dark, and low to the ground. The engine purred as it parked, and a man stepped out. He looked older than I remembered. Beard a little more gray, but his eyes, same as ever. "Hey, kid," he said, like it hadn't been 3 years since we last spoke. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Hey." He clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Let's go." "Where?" I asked. Nate gave me a half smile. "Somewhere you're actually wanted." I turned toward the glowing house, one last time. I could see them through the window, laughing, drinking, unwrapping gifts they'd forgotten by morning, and they had no idea what was coming next. I followed Nate to the car and shut the door behind me, and that was the moment everything began to change. The ride away from Denise's house was quiet at first. Not awkward, just still. The kind of silence that wraps around you like a blanket when you finally stepped out of a storm. I didn't realize how tense my shoulders had been until we were a few miles down the road, the glow of that house swallowed by the trees behind us. That's when I finally let out a breath. Nate glanced over but didn't say anything. He just turned up the heat a little and tapped the steering wheel in time with whatever classic rock station he had playing softly through the car speakers. "Thanks for coming," I said eventually, my voice low. "Didn't even hesitate," he replied. "You shouldn't have had to send that message in the first place." I looked out the window at the dark highway. Snow clung to the shoulders of the road like it didn't want to let go. I knew the feeling. "So," Nate continued, clearing his throat, "you hungry?" I nodded. Starving. We ended up at a roadside diner just off the interstate. It was mostly empty, save for a couple of truckers and a woman in a booth wearing headphones and knitting something red and woolly. Nate ordered pancakes and bacon. I got a cheeseburger and a milkshake. When the food came, it felt like the first real meal I'd had in weeks. I didn't realize I'd started crying until I saw the drop fall into the ketchup on my plate. Nate didn't react, didn't get awkward or flinch. He just passed me a napkin and kept talking like nothing happened. "You know," he said between bites, "your mom and I were close once. Real close. Then Denise and the others started planting seeds, making her feel small, making her think keeping the peace was more important than doing what was right." I wiped my face and said nothing. "She used to stand up for me," he continued, "used to defend me even when I made mistakes. But then she got tired or scared. I don't know. And she stopped." It was weird hearing someone talk about my mom like that. Not bad, just honest. Most people in our family only spoke about her in platitudes or soft disapproval. "I don't blame her," Nate said. "Not anymore, but I wish she'd picked you over them." I nodded slowly. "I think she wanted to, but wanting and doing are two different things." He looked at me, really looked. "You ever think about starting over somewhere else?" I hesitated. "I've thought about it," I admitted, "but I don't have much saved. Just started a new job. I rent a room in a house with 2 other guys. It's nothing glamorous." Nate smirked. "Neither's greatness. Not at first." I blinked. "That a quote?" "Nope. Just sounded good." We both laughed at that and something loosened in my chest. Not fixed, just less tangled. After dinner, he offered to drive me back to my place. I almost said no. I didn't want the night to end. But I was exhausted, and my phone had started buzzing with messages from my mom. None of them were apologies, just, "Where did you go?" "Your aunt is upset. We didn't mean to hurt your feelings, but you overreacted. Please don't make this into a thing." Classic. I didn't respond. When we got to my place, Nate parked and turned toward me before I got out. "You're smart, Tyler," he said. "You've got more sense than all of them put together. They'll never admit it, but they know it too. That's why they keep trying to shrink you down." "Because they're afraid I'll outgrow them?" I asked, trying to sound amused. "Because you already have." I sat with that for a second, then I got out, waved goodbye, and went inside. The house was dark. My roommates were gone for the holidays. I dropped my coat, sat on the edge of my bed, and stared at the wall. And that's when it hit me. I had no family pictures on display, no childhood keepsakes, nothing that anchored me to the idea of home. Just a bed, a desk, a few tools in the corner, and a calendar pinned to the back of the door with a few dates circled in red. One of them had today's date. I'd circled it last month, thinking maybe this year would be different. I tore it down. The next few weeks passed in a fog. I went to work, fixed broken laptops and fried motherboards, and came home to silence. I stopped checking the family group chat, muted it entirely. I didn't block anyone. I wasn't trying to start drama. I just disappeared, and no one noticed. Except Nate. He texted me every few days, little things. A link to an article, a funny meme, a video of a cat knocking over soup cans. Sometimes he'd just send "you good" or "proud of you," and that was enough to make the rest of the day bearable. Then, around mid-January, he sent me something else. "I've got a friend who's retiring, ran a small tech repair shop for 30 years, no kids, looking to sell, cheap." I blinked at the message. "In state?" I replied. "About an hour south of you, town small but growing. You interested?" I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the message for a long time. My pulse started to quicken just thinking about it. Was I ready for something like that? Was I capable? That night, I couldn't sleep. The next morning, I told Nate I wanted to meet the guy. 2 days later, we drove down to a sleepy little town nestled between two hills and a river bend. The shop was small but clean, with a big window out front and a hand-painted sign that read, "Tech Haven, repairs, restorations, resurrections." The owner, Jim, was in his 60s. He walked with a limp and wore a smile that didn't seem to go away. He showed me around the back, explained the books, pointed out the machines, the quirks of the regulars, the parts that needed updating. It was humble, but it worked. And more than that, it fit. "Been thinking about selling to some chain store," Jim said at one point, "but Nate here says you're the real deal." I looked at Nate, startled. He just grinned and shrugged. Jim scratched his chin. "I don't want $1 million, just want to know it'll be in good hands." We worked out a deal. It wasn't instant. I had to get a small loan, dip into my savings, and move down temporarily. But by March, I was holding the keys. I renamed the shop Circuit and Soul. The first month was rough, barely broke even, but I kept showing up, kept fixing what I could. Word spread. A teenager came in with a busted gaming console, and I fixed it in under a day. He brought 3 friends the next week. A retired teacher brought in her old camcorder full of family videos. I digitized everything and burned it to DVD for her. She cried when she picked it up, hugged me twice. I started putting up photos on the wall, not of my family, of my customers, people who smiled when they left, people I helped. Each one reminded me that I had value, that I mattered, that I wasn't some background extra in someone else's holiday movie. I was the lead in my own. Spring turned to summer. Business picked up. I hired a part-time assistant from the local community college. I sponsored a Little League team. I got invited to a town cookout and actually said yes. I laughed more, slept better. I even found myself whistling in the mornings. Then, one day in July, I got an email. It was from my cousin Jared. Subject: Hey, heard you opened a shop. That's cool. Denise was wondering if you could take a look at her laptop. It's been acting weird. Let me know your rates. No. How are you? No, sorry about what happened. Just entitlement, wrapped in casual. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because I was finally somewhere that didn't treat me like an afterthought, and deep down I knew the story wasn't over, but next time I would be the one writing the ending. By the end of that summer, I wasn't the same man who sat alone in Denise's garage, staring at a rusted vise and a $10 gas card like they were symbols of my worth. I was rebuilding, not just a life, but an identity. One where I didn't need to beg for a seat at the table because I'd built my own damn workshop. And I wasn't done building. Business at Circuit and Soul was steady by fall. I'd fixed everything from antique radios to water-damaged MacBooks. Word of mouth in a town like ours traveled fast, especially when you returned people's memories to them. I was no genius, just patient, careful, focused. I'd wake up every morning before sunrise, brew a pot of black coffee, and get to work. And every time a customer left with a grateful smile or a good review online, something in me healed a little more, but not everything healed. See, something still burned underneath all that progress. I didn't want revenge for the sake of revenge. That wasn't who I was. But I also wasn't going to pretend like that Christmas didn't happen, like years of mockery and condescension didn't happen, like Denise and her perfect family hadn't tried to write me out of the story just because I didn't fit their script. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I just wanted to show them who I'd become without them. And as fate would have it, the perfect opportunity landed in my inbox a few weeks before Thanksgiving. It was a mass email sent to me by mistake. Subject: Family Holiday Update. Denise's big idea. The message was from Haley, one of my cousins who had always been more of a follower than a ringleader. She must have hit the wrong contact list because it was clear I wasn't supposed to be included. I opened it out of curiosity. I shouldn't have, but I did. Inside was a lengthy, detail-packed plan about this year's holiday gathering. Bigger than ever. Denise had apparently booked a private lodge upstate, complete with catering, custom decorations, matching sweaters, and a professional videographer. The entire family was going to gather for a 3-day weekend of celebration, reflection, and legacy building. The part that made my jaw tighten: the last line. This year, we're creating a family video time capsule. Everyone will share memories, gratitude, and stories about what makes our family so special. They even scheduled interviews for everyone. Ryan and Jared got an entire hour slot. My name? Not on the list, not even a pending, not even a maybe. That was the moment I knew. I didn't just want to show them who I was. I wanted them to see who they really were. So I started making calls. The first one, of course, was to Nate. "Thought you might call," he said, barely waiting for me to finish explaining. "I'm not looking to humiliate anyone," I said. I want the truth in the room. I want someone to finally say it out loud." Nate chuckled. "Tyler, they built their whole world on polite lies. You think they'll let truth through the front door? Then I'll walk it through the back." He didn't ask what I meant, just said, "I'm in." Next, I reached out to Jim, the retired shop owner I'd bought Circuit and Soul from. He was old school, meticulous, and loved two things: woodworking and videography. He'd filmed weddings, anniversaries, town parades, still had all his old gear. "You ever do hidden camera work?" I asked him one afternoon. Jim raised an eyebrow. "You planning to expose aliens?" "Just some family dynamics," he nodded. "I'm listening." Together, we put together a plan. Jim would pose as the assistant to Denise's videographer. His role? Technical backup, just in case something went wrong with the main equipment. What Denise didn't know was that Jim's cameras were also wired to capture everything, not just the rehearsed testimonials and speeches, but the candid off-script comments between takes, the passive-aggressive snipes, the little eye rolls, the moments they didn't want on film. I didn't want to frame anyone. I wasn't editing a hit piece. I just wanted a copy of who they really were when they didn't think anyone was watching. The second layer of the plan? My own interview. I called Haley, feigned surprise about the trip, and said I'd love to come. Said I was doing much better these days. that I'd been so grateful for the family's support over the years. I laid it on thick. She bought it instantly. Oh my gosh, Tyler, that's so great to hear. Aunt Denise will be thrilled. Thrilled, my ass. Still, within 2 days, I was sent my own 1-hour slot on the schedule. Can't wait to hear your story, Haley wrote. Oh, they'd hear it. But before that could happen, I needed proof. Not just words, not just a monologue. I needed receipts. So I started digging. Emails, text, voicemails. I had more than I realized. Screenshots of my mom's half-hearted justifications, Denise's comments over the years, photos of the garage table setup from last Christmas. The $10 gas card still sat in a drawer in my workshop untouched. But the real ace up my sleeve, Ryan. See, Ryan had this habit of posting everything to his private Instagram stories, not the public account he curated like a LinkedIn resume, the real one. The one full of behind-the-scenes mockery, casual cruelty, and family gossip. He forgot he still had me on there. I downloaded everything. In one clip from last Christmas, he filmed himself walking past the garage while I sat inside. When your cousin's too boring for the real party, the caption read, followed by laughing emojis. Another showed Denise complaining about how some people just bring the mood down with their low-energy presence. There were clips of family dinners where they mocked my clothes, my voice, my job. I didn't even feel angry when I watched them. I just felt free because for the first time I didn't need to prove anything. The truth was already there. All I had to do was put it together. So I started editing. Late nights after work, I'd sit in the back room of my shop and splice together a montage. I wasn't being petty. I wasn't adding dramatic music or sound effects. I just laid the clips side by side, my footage, theirs, and a narration I recorded myself. I talked about growing up in silence, about being treated like furniture in a house full of mirrors, about what it feels like when the people who should have your back use your spine as a doormat. And then I ended it with a single message. This is what family looks like when they think no one's watching. I burned the video to a flash drive, tucked it in a small black case, and slipped it into my coat pocket. 2 nights before Thanksgiving, I got a call from my mom. I heard you're coming, she said, her voice neutral. I am. Pause. You don't have to prove anything, Tyler. I know, I replied. I'm just showing up, like everyone else. Another pause. Denise is trying hard to make this one perfect. Please don't make things harder. That old guilt tried to squeeze into my chest. The one that used to make me fold. Stay silent. Smile politely. But I didn't let it in. I'm not making anything harder, I said. I'm just telling my story. Isn't that what the time capsule's for? She didn't answer. Just sighed and said, drive safe. I hung up. The day of the gathering, I arrived just late enough to miss the group photos, but early enough to still be noticed. Denise greeted me with a stiff hug and a surprised expression she barely masked. Well, look who finally made time for his family, she said, all saccharine. I smiled. Oh, wouldn't miss it for the world. Ryan offered a fist bump. Jared raised an eyebrow and muttered, new jacket? Wow, big spender. I let it all slide because I knew what they didn't. Jim was already in position, cameras rolling, and every word they spoke was being recorded, not just the ones they rehearsed. By the time my interview slot arrived, I was ready. I sat in the chair. The lights hit my face. The mic was clipped to my collar. A young videographer named Scott asked if I was nervous. No, I said calmly, just honest. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1, and I looked directly into the lens and said, my name is Tyler, and this is what it looks like when someone finally tells the truth. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out the flash drive. I didn't slam the flash drive on the table or make a dramatic declaration. There was no music cue, no slow clap, no righteous fury in my voice, just calm, just truth. This is for the time capsule, I said, handing it to Scott, the young videographer. I figured it might be easier to tell my story this way, so I took the time to prepare something. He looked at me, confused but polite. All right, man, Want me to preview it before? No, I interrupted gently. Let it roll when everyone else's stories roll. Just let it play through, no edits. He shrugged and pocketed the drive. You got it. It was done. The rest of the day played out like most family functions, fake smiles, stiff hugs, jokes with razors tucked behind them. But I moved through it with a stillness I'd never had before. I didn't try to belong. I didn't linger near the inner circle of Denise, Ryan, and Jared. I sat with the second cousins, the ones who usually got brushed aside like furniture. I helped clean up dishes when no one asked me to. I played cards with the kids, and I watched. Every comment, every sneer, every time someone forgot my name mid-sentence or called me garage boy behind a plastic smile, I clocked it. But I didn't respond, because I'd already answered. The next morning we gathered in the lodge's large den for what Denise called Legacy Hour. There were folding chairs arranged in a half circle around a big flat screen, fresh coffee brewing in the corner, and an uncomfortable energy in the air like everyone knew something was coming, but couldn't put their finger on what. Denise stood at the front of the room, beaming with the smug pride of someone who thought they were directing a documentary. "This is going to be so special," she said, holding up a remote. "Our family, in our own words, a gift for future generations." Ryan and Jared sat to her left, snickering about something on their phones. My mom sat beside my dad, her hands clasped tightly. Nate stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, face unreadable. Jim, bless him, was tucked quietly behind the AV setup, nodding at me once before he gave Scott the go-ahead. The screen flickered to life. The first few clips were harmless enough, sweet even. Haley talked about baking with Grandma. Jared shared a story about a family camping trip where he heroically rescued a raccoon from the cooler. Denise went on a tearful monologue about family values, unity, tradition, legacy. I let them have their moment. Then came my part. Scott queued up the file labeled Untitled Move. At first there was just silence, then my voice, steady and measured, filled the room. My name is Tyler, and for most of my life, I thought I was the problem. The screen cut to a photo of me at 6, sitting by myself at the kids' table while the rest of the family posed for a group shot in the background. I thought if I worked harder, spoke less, smiled more, I'd be let in, I'd be enough, I'd matter. Denise shifted in her seat. The screen showed clips of past Christmases, me shoveling snow alone, me fixing the generator in the cold, me cleaning up dishes while Ryan and Jared played video games in the background. Then came the audio. Clips from Ryan's Instagram stories, laughter, jokes at my expense. Denise's voice saying, "He's just so heavy, you know?" Like a dark cloud at the table. There were gasps. Jared sat up. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. Denise shot a glare at Scott. "Turn that off." But Jim stepped forward and said firmly, "Tyler asked that it be included. This is his legacy segment." Scott hesitated, looking between them, and then pressed play again. My narration continued. For years I thought silence was grace, that if I kept my head down one day I'd earn a place at the table. A photo of me sitting in the garage from last Christmas appeared on the screen. But then I realized I don't want a seat at that table. A video clip played, grainy, captured from Jim's hidden angle, the moment Denise pointed toward the garage and said, "This table's for real family." The room went dead quiet. My voice returned, slow and clear. If this is how family treats the quiet ones, the odd ones, the different ones, maybe it's time someone showed the whole picture. I included clips of the text messages from my mom blaming me for making things a thing. A snippet from Denise's callous laughter about the gas card, the footage of Ryan mocking me from the hallway saying, "When your cousin's too boring for the real party." Then, at the very end, a message in white text on a black screen, "You taught me what family isn't, and that taught me who I want to be." Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's who you choose not to carry with you. The screen faded to black. Silence. Then chaos. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Denise exploded, standing up so fast her chair clattered backward. You ambushed us! Ryan jumped to his feet. That wasn't even legal. You can't just record people. Nate stepped forward. Actually, in this state, one-party consent law. Look it up. Jared looked at me like I just punched his dog. You've been holding on to this stuff like a psycho. This is family, man. No, I said, standing up slowly. Family doesn't laugh while you eat alone in a garage. Family doesn't forget your name while opening the gifts you gave them. Family doesn't ask for help and then mock the hands that offer it. My voice didn't shake. Not once. I turned to Denise. I don't want an apology. I don't want a seat. I don't want a place in your time capsule. I came here to close the chapter. She stared at me, mouth twitching, like she couldn't decide if she wanted to scream or cry, so I gave her nothing to respond to. I turned and walked toward the exit. Nate followed. My mom called after me. Tyler, wait. I paused, not turned, just paused. And she said softly, I'm sorry. I wanted to believe her. Maybe a part of me did, but it was too late. I hope you find your voice, I said, before someone else in this family loses theirs. Then I walked out the door. The fresh air hit my face like a baptism, cold, clean, sharp. Nate put a hand on my shoulder as we walked toward the car. That was something. I nodded. I didn't do it to burn bridges. You didn't, he said. You just made sure no one else trips over them in the dark. Later that week, I uploaded my segment to a private link, sent it to a few people who had always been kind but quiet, cousins, nieces, neighbors. Some wrote back, some didn't, but one message stood out. It was from Haley. I saw the whole thing. I never knew how bad it was. I'm sorry and thank you. That was enough. Circuit and Soul saw a spike in business that month. Someone must have shared the video more widely. Locals started bringing in not just broken machines, but stories. They wanted to talk. They wanted to be heard. I listened because I knew what it was like to go unheard for too long. Christmas came and went. I didn't get an invite. I didn't need one. Instead, I hosted a dinner at the shop for some customers who had nowhere to go, brought in a space heater, laid out a buffet, even strung some lights around the workbench, and I sat at the head of my table. Not in a garage, not in exile, but in a place I made, with people who saw me, not just used me. That night, as snow fell softly outside and laughter echoed off the tools on the wall, I realized something. I hadn't lost a family. I'd finally let go of the illusion of one, and I'd built something better in its place, something real, something whole.